food is still no secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon.
Today is Ben from Unified Fields. Would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ben Buchanan from Unified Fields. I am a butcher of over 20 years now. Been a butcher pretty much my entire adult life. And I got into it, honestly, just needed a job that paid a little better than the convenience store I was working in. And I learned pretty quick how much of a art there was to the trade, and it was just really fulfilling work that fed people and is really a steady career path. And I've always been able to get a job being a butcher no matter where I went in the country, and so I've been doing that for the past 20 years leading up to the pandemic. I had been building a mobile processing rig, just kind of on my own dime and with what little time I had up at my buddy's farm in West Virginia. But when COVID hit and the meat industry got turned on its head, I decided I really needed to do something to accelerate the project. So I went out and got an investment to finish building the rig and do some marketing and stuff to get my name out there, and started running around doing mobile processing for farmers in the area, where I'd go out with the crane truck and the refrigerated cooler and slaughter them on site and just leave everything there. It could plug in right at the farm. So when the farmer sold his meat or, he kept it himself, they could say this animal was born on the farm, raised on the farm, processed on the farm, and the first time it leaves is like in your cooler, which is good, because a big gripe a lot of farmers have is they don't really have much oversight on their processing. When they drop the cow off or the pig or whatever at the slaughterhouse, it goes in there and they don't know what happens to it after that. And a lot of them complain they're not getting their meat back that they sent in. This on-farm system they have complete oversight of everything and can see the whole process from beginning to end to really give them a perspective of how much work goes into it. And also the other big part is if they have the right composting setup on the farm, all the byproduct from processing animals, like the guts and the hide and the bones and everything like that, is amazing compost that when you break it down properly, it adds tons of nutrients back to the soil, and all that stuff should get returned back to the farm where it came from to continue that regenerative cycle. The idea is just giving farmers more access to processing and more oversight on what they're doing. But I realized pretty quick when I was going out there running around, my tiny little trailer butcher truck was making a difference, but it is just a tiny little sliver of difference in this industry that has gotten so consolidated, and so much control is taken by the big four packers, which everybody knows most of the names anyway: Tyson and Cargill, JBS, National Beef. More than half of those companies are foreign owned, and the other half are just such giant conglomerates that they all are pretty much in cahoots with each other and control the market, which is leaving farmers high and dry, not being able to be profitable with their operations, and leaving consumers high and dry paying outrageous prices for meat, all the while they're exporting at record rates, which is just driving up everybody's price even more. So that mobile rig thing, I was like, you know what, this is great, but I really need to do something to make a bigger difference in the industry. So I really started leaning into the whole training and developing butcher skills and everything, because I could go out there and do a little bit on my rig, doing a couple animals at a time, or I could use the knowledge I have between my ears and try and train as many butchers as I can to really make a bigger difference on the industry, because that's what we need right now, especially with the Biden administration putting all this money into building up a more competitive and resilient meat processing system. A lot of these small meat processors and new meat processors are getting this funding now and just having staffs that have no skill, and it makes it really difficult for them to be profitable. So for about the past year and a half now, I've been doing a lot of on-site training all across the country. I've been in Oklahoma and New York and South Dakota and North Carolina, and all farmers. Almost all of them have been farmers that are just fed up and wanted to start their own processing because they just didn't have any other market channels for their stuff. And just going there, training them hands-on in the business, the skill, management parts of it. And then our keystone project is here at Community Kitchen Pittsburgh, where about 2 years ago I started teaching an intro to butcher class in there, just embedded into their overall culinary apprenticeship certification program. And it's just been so popular. We've been just growing it since then. I mean, we started with just a butcher block and a couple knives, and now we have a full meat processing room upstairs with all the commercial equipment, and we can cut, cure, smoke anything and make a bunch of good specialty products and everything like that. But this has kind of been where we're like serving our residency, we'll say, where I'm here a lot of the time teaching students cutting meat for their retail program. And we recently just got a grant through the Appalachian Regional Commission to build out a fully registered apprenticeship program. So I'm building out the curriculum now that will register with the Department of Labor. And when they go through this 2,000-hour program, they'll come out with a certificate at the end that'll show them that they can show to employers that gives them some credibility in the field. So,
congratulations on that.
thank you. And that Power Arc grant we got, which is going to pay for us to build out this curriculum and then start training a butcher manager for Community Kitchen Pittsburgh here that will basically take the reins and doing what I'm doing right now and then become the trainer. And so the way it's written for the first year, we're going to have 2 apprentices every 3 months come in and then cycle back out in a 6-month window. So like the first 3 months we'll get 2, the next 3 months we'll get 2, the next 3 months we'll get 2, and 2 will graduate into on-the-job training, which we have a couple butchers in the pipeline that really want those skilled apprentices to go to their place when they come out. That's exciting that, we'll have a training program and immediate job placement for folks. And the butchers that I'm talking to that have shops, that is their number one problem right now, is getting and maintaining skilled labor. It's a very, very high skill industry. And if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have skills, you're just going to not make money. It's, you have to be efficient and clean. Yield has to be right for you to make good money. And if you don't know what you're doing, you end up destroying a lot of meat and missing a lot of stuff. I emphasize safety and doing it the right way, as slow as you have to first, and then the speed will come. That's my biggest advice to folks, is like, don't try and be fast right out of the gate. Just do it properly, as slow as you need to, and then your muscle memory will start to build up, and then you can do it in your sleep.
Is that a butcher pun, muscle memory?
No, I never thought of it that way, but
you talked about the 4 big conglomerates that process most of the meat in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Say 4 or 5.
It's 4 when you're talking about beef. If you roll in pork into it, there is 5. Smithfield Foods, which had been the American household name in pork for like almost a century, back in I think 2013, was bought by WH Group, which is 100% Chinese-backed company. So like Smithfield is 100% owned by China now.
So for our listeners, people who might not know, who haven't studied this industry, what is the problem? I mean, we did realize it during pandemic that the problem of these mass scaled up meat processing systems in the country is that if one part of the system, the distribution or the transportation or any of those parts fail, then you have waste. Yeah. And then it's this emergency. So I think during pandemic, we realized that. But like in general, if everything's operating properly, what is the problem with that kind of system?
I mean, it's just exploitive on so many different levels. You're not living in symbiosis with your environment. Like if you have a regenerative cycle, all the manure that comes out of the back end of the animal is evenly dispersed naturally across the land to make more nutrient dense soil, which creates more bugs, which creates more birds, and just the ecology just lives.
Bugs in the way that we like bugs, not,
yeah.
not a problem bug.
Yeah. But the issue is with the factory farming and things like that there's so many animals crammed into a small space that manure is a liability, not an asset. And so you end up with like waste lagoons that create
manure lagoons. It sounds so lovely.
Yeah, and it's creates a lot of bad gases, and then also when it rains real bad, they overflow, and then all that stuff ends up in waterways. So it's like a 1-2 environmental punch in that fact. And it's really, especially with the chicken industry and the pork industry, there's not many independent producers out there anymore. It's usually a farmer that takes out huge loans to build a chicken house, to get a contract with Tyson, and then they are just under the thumb of Tyson and their whole tournament system that they have that pits farmers against each other, and they're holding all the risk and liability for the operation, and Tyson makes all the money because they provide the birds, and then they take the birds and you just get a little check for however many birds that you were able to keep alive through the process. And
so the farmers are big eggs bitches,
basically. Yeah, they're and they entice them with all these like lucrative numbers on contracts and everything, but then once you finally get involved, there's all these like pitfalls and loopholes that it's like, oh, you didn't produce enough, so like you get docked.
There's all these gotchas.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's exploitive in that way, where it's exploiting the farmer and chipping away at their equity. If they own the land, it's been on their farm for generations or whatever, their equity just kind of keeps getting chipped away at it because you're not profitable every year and end up having to parcel off or sell stuff and
going into debt with equipment and stuff too.
Yeah. And then the younger generation looks at it like, wow, my granddad or dad or whatever has been busting his ass and hardly making anything on this. Why would I want this? So they don't want to take it over, and then the farmer ends up selling.
On the mobile processing facility that you have, do you do all kinds of animals? You mentioned beef.
I do mainly beef because that is of the livestock farmers that are out there, cattle producers are kind of the last standing independent producer out there, because the chicken industry's been chickenized and the pork industry's been chickenized. Like there's not many independent producers out there that do anything at like any kind of scale where they are making much money at it.
So what do you mean by chickenized?
Chickenizing the industry has been a term that's coined. They say that when it means that it's become so consolidated and all the independent producers have been pushed out, so there is no like open, transparent marketplace for that anymore. So there is no price discovery, and there's no way to like set a standard of price for that product. I've probably worked at over a dozen different plants throughout my career. And then when I started this company, I, worked at a bunch of farms doing the mobile slaughter thing. And then just through like word of mouth, I started getting recommendations from folks that like, hey, I'm building a facility. Can you help me with the design? Like, how high do I have to put the rail system? What kind of equipment do I need to do this many and things like that? So I started like really leaning into the training and consulting part of it. Like this summer, I was all over the place. I was everywhere. I mean, I went out as far as Colorado's Western Slope to Oklahoma, and I've been in New York, Tennessee. And I mean, I got to do a lot of traveling this past year, just going and teaching people the trade. So it's been pretty interesting. When I first got into it when I was 18, I remember the hide guy would come and pay us like $55 for each one of the cattle hides that we salted. And now you have to pay $8 per hide for them to pick them up. And most of them now are just like, well, then I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to throw it in the dumpster and pay the dump fee because it's cheaper.
Tell me about the name of your organization, Unified Fields.
So it's got a couple different meanings. Obviously, I'm trying to bring farmers together to take more control of their processing and have a little more oversight, and unify them to have more market power so they are profitable and we're not losing farmland like crazy. So that's kind of the first meaning of Unified Fields, is like bringing farmer fields together to make them more powerful. But I've always been super into physics, particle physics, general relativity, quantum electrodynamics, and all kinds of fringy science stuff. And the unified field theory is the elusive thing in physics.
When I was in Chatham grad school, food studies, there was a meat class. I didn't take it, but the students went there and witnessed a full processing day. It's a lot of death. You got to kill something.
Yeah.
in order to get meat.
I engage with it pretty intimately because it is a very heavy responsibility, and there are successful deaths and not successful deaths. And my goal is to have 100% successful death for all the animals, and that means like as minimal stress as possible leading them up to it, which is why the on-farm slaughter thing is so great, because like any animal gets so stressed out when you load them on a trailer and bounce them around these roads and potholes and everything else and throw them into a cold dark slaughterhouse and then run them through the system. They just get a lot of stress hormones in them. But so making sure that they're as stress-free as possible right up to the point, and then having a one shot, one kill effective stun is a must. If they have too much mobility where you can't get a clean shot or whatever, you just don't do it. You get a better setup until you can guarantee that, and just doing everything as methodically and cleanly as possible, and like not attaching a lot of emotion to it one way or the other. With that philosophy, I try and say a little prayer and make peace and give thanks before I put anything down, because like anything that has consciousness can feel pain or distress. And it's not just animals. Like there's countless studies out there that show that plants very definitively show emotional response to stimuli.
How has the trend in urban agriculture and local foods and all of that, how has that movement affected the work that you do?
I think it's helped like raise awareness and re-engage people with their food, whether it's meat or whatever, because even if you're growing a tiny little postage stamp garden or something, there's just so much more fulfillment and everything you get from growing your own food. And people get inspired by that and want to find other like wholesomely grown local foods. And I think that trend has helped a lot, because people are more engaged and want to know where their food comes from and want to find the best food possible that's raised, ethically and humanely and processed in, a clean way. Then urban agriculture definitely has helped bring that awareness up a couple notches for folks that normally would just be like, oh, my steak materializes in the styrofoam package and that's where it comes from. So I like to just give a promo spot to Unified Fields and Community Kitchen Pittsburgh here, that if you are trying to buy good local meat, we have a meat case here that we sell, beef and pork and chicken, that is all 100% locally sourced, and it's all pretty well competitively priced with the grocery store too. And then we are going to be doing a lot of like public workshops too, where we'll do a hog breakdown and then a dinner right after it that features cuts from that hog, or doing knife sharpening classes, or sausage making demos and things like that. Trying to get the community and consumers actually engaged. All kinds of different.
Where can people find out about these classes?
Through Community Kitchen Pittsburgh's website, or stop in CKP to ask. You can email thebutcher@ckpgh.org. If you're on our Instagram or on our newsletter or stuff, we always give a blast out whenever we have a save the date or upcoming event that we need to sell tickets for or whatever. So
all right, well, we'll look there.
Yeah.
Ben, thank you so much for your time. This has been fascinating.
Yeah,
and
it was great. We went in all different directions today. Huh?
We did. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley.
With Bowl and Spoon is written, produced and hosted by Shelley Danko Day. Original theme song was written and performed by Paul LeBreeze and friends. You can listen to With Bowl and Spoon wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review and share. Follow us and send us questions or messages on Facebook and Instagram at With Bowl and Spoon. Thanks for listening.